was only added to, deeply added to, by a refusal to answer any substantive questions, running out the clock on members, many of whom served in uniform, all of whom, on behalf of their constituents, deserve to ask good faith questions. The dual-hatted Secretary of State and National Security Advisor shrugged his shoulders when asked repeatedly, how much did this cost? And literally joked about it. This is not a joking matter. It's not a joking matter to those 7 incredibly heroic and brave Americans who were wounded in this action. And by the way, speaking of trust and lack of trust, that wasn't even disclosed until yesterday. Right before Christmas, all of us went into that same room. Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth lied to our faces. More importantly, they lied to the American people who we proudly represent. They told us the goal was not regime change. They told us there would be no land attacks. They told us they would come to Congress before doing so because they also understand, or pretended anyway, to understand our Constitution. As I said, they didn't even tell us for days that there were American casualties, 2 of whom are still recovering in the hospital, and thank God we were just told will be okay. Frankly, the only moment of honesty in all this so far has been when Donald Trump that morning said, this is about oil. And I think he said it 12 plus times and has continued to say it. And then when he at least was willing to say what Rubio and others have tried to cover up and obfuscate, which is we're going to quote unquote run this country. Again, none of the questions about what that looks like were answered by Secretary Rubio in the briefing we just came out of. Frankly, I think the only people who are getting the truth here, and the president confirmed this on Air Force One the other night, are the oil executives who stand to make record-breaking profits. And having fought in a war for oil, I refuse to allow that to happen again. We already spent $7 trillion plus on 2 forever wars that never should have been started in the first place. And the choice now before us is, do we want to send more of our blood and treasure, our most precious resources, our young men and women, into a country that is a mess and has been a mess, or the 6 others, by the way, that the president and his advisors have named and tweeted about? Or do we actually want to invest in the American people? Do we want to get health care for everyone? Do we want to get infrastructure that works? Do we want a better education system? Do we want to lower costs of housing and gas and groceries and everything else, which is the mandate of this administration? That's what we are all about. We're about stopping and ending forever wars and lowering costs for our constituents. We will not allow them to continue to lie to the American people. We'll hold them to account, and I'm so proud to stand with my colleagues here who will continue to speak up and not let them lie to us and, more importantly, to the American people. It is my honor now is Mike here? Mike Thompson? Nope, okay. I think he's on the way. My honor now to invite up a key member of our leadership. We're so proud to have him as our veteran voice in the leadership of our party, Representative Ted Lieu. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Congressman Moulton and the co-chairs of the House Democratic Veterans Caucus, Congressmembers Ryan and Deluzio, for setting up this press conference, and all the Democratic veterans who are here today. Healthcare costs are skyrocketing. We also know that for the first time since the early pandemic and 2008 recession, America is losing blue-collar jobs, has been doing so since this February, and food prices continue to increase. And what is Donald Trump's response? Quote, in his words, running Venezuela. That is insane. That is not what the American people want. The American people want this president and Republicans to focus on the affordability crisis. And now we're hearing that the administration is going to seize Venezuela's oil, sell it, and then help rebuild Venezuela with that oil money. We should be rebuilding America, not rebuilding Venezuela. The focus of the Trump administration is completely misplaced. And what's even more alarming is they have no plan for the day after for Venezuela. There's no specific plan as to how they're going to get to a democracy. And the person they're backing right now, Delcy Rodriguez, is the hand-picked vice president of Maduro. They have the same repressive regime in place right now that's being even more repressive against the people of Venezuela, because now they're going after all sorts of Venezuelans confiscating their cell phones. So things, in fact, are even worse right now than they were just a few days ago, and there is no plan, and we need to hear a plan from this administration. And as Seth Moulton has said, our military does amazing things. That's what America does. But it's always the day after that America has big problems with, and this administration needs to come up with a plan and needs to focus on helping Americans. That's what we should do. My honor now to introduce the amazing Representative Mike Thompson from Northern California.
Thank you very much. It's an honor for me to stand with my fellow veterans today. I served in combat with 173rd Airborne Brigade. I was wounded in combat, and like everyone else on this stage who has served in combat, I'm here to tell you that war needs to be the absolute last resort. We all know it because we've all lived it. And many of our colleagues, many of our fellow military folks did not come home. The sad reality is that in war, people die. Now, there's no question that Maduro is a bad guy, but there's also no question that it's Congress that must approve acts of war. And if we send someone's son or daughter into harm's way, we better have a damn good reason to do that. And I'm here to tell you that oil is not a damn good reason to send anyone into combat. In 2002, I opposed the invasion of Iraq, and I got lots of criticism for doing that. It was a decision that I thought was important because we were sending troops into harm's way. I knew that people's sons and daughters would die. And I also knew that the justification that we were given was nonsense. It wasn't accurate. This is no different. We have not heard any justification. It was all about drugs 2 days ago. Today, it's all about oil. And as I said, oil is no reason to send anyone's sons or daughters into combat. So I'm here to ask that the American people stand with us and that we stand with the American people against any unprovoked military expansion in Venezuela, in Cuba, in Greenland, or any of this other nonsense that this administration is talking about. I'm here to call on the Speaker to bring up the bill that we're talking about today to prevent this president from enacting war without a vote of the Congress of the United States of America. And it's my honor to ask Representative Houlahan, a great service member, a great veteran, and a great colleague. Thank you.
Thank you. I very much appreciate being here with my colleagues, my fellow veterans. I had prepared remarks, but have decided to sort of go off the cuff because as I was walking in here, I was asked by a reporter what my thoughts were about what's happening with Senator Kelly and the attacks that have been made against him and his honored and storied career, and whether or not his statement represented how we should be responding. And the truth is, there were 6 of us, and now there are more. And there are more of us than are standing here on this stage who are veterans, who believe in the fact, as my dad raised me to understand, that the Department of Defense is the last line of defense. It is not something that you use to bend the world to your will whenever you feel like it. And effectively, that's what this administration is doing without any sort of clarity or understanding of why we're doing this. And I think that it is important and impactful when people like we are, people who have served anywhere from the Vietnam War through Desert Storm and through all of the current and modern wars, remember our history well enough to know that this is not what we are put in this service to do. This is not what our oath is about. And so I'm very grateful to be standing here. I'm very hopeful that eventually that I will not be just joined by Democratic veterans, but also by Republican veterans as well, who understand and remember their history, who understand and remember that we are the Department of Defense, not anything else. I'm grateful to be here, and it's my opportunity to introduce another fine veteran, another one from the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Representative Deluzio.
Thank you, Representative Houlahan. I'm so proud to be joined and stand here with my fellow veterans. I'll lay out a pretty simple standard that I think we all should ask, whether you send Americans to fight or occupy a foreign land. Can you look young people in the eye and say they should risk their life and maybe die for it? Can you look parents and grandparents in the eye and say that their children or grandchildren should risk their lives and maybe die for it? I think if I ask my constituents and the folks on this stage ask theirs whether their kids and grandkids or maybe them should go risk their lives to bleed and die to occupy Venezuela for their oil, I bet you they say no. And the interesting thing to me is this administration has not even asked. The Republicans we serve with in Congress don't even want to ask their constituents that. I'll ask them some questions. If, God forbid, Americans come back and flag drape caskets, are you going to stand there and tell their parents and their widows and their children it was worth it? There are already 7 Americans that we know of who were wounded in what happened over the weekend, and thank God they survived. And as I understand it, will recover. These are not idle or hypothetical risks. And so many on this stage understand that or have friends who may not have come home. That's the standard. So the Congress, Democrats and Republicans, should grow a spine, look at the Constitution and Article 1 that rests those war powers with us and the American people, not a president, not any president. That's my simple message. Our Republican colleagues should do the same and join us. Thank you. And I should introduce, from the Commonwealth of Virginia, Representative Vindman.
Thank you so much. So thank you to my colleagues, Seth Moulton and Pat Ryan, for gathering us here today, and to all of the Democratic veterans that have put on this uniform, this country's cloth. Today I stand before you, a 25-year Army veteran and a member of the U.S. Armed Services, House Armed Services Committee, representing tens of thousands of active duty service members and veterans in the 7th Congressional District of Virginia. And here's what I know to be true. The American people don't want this war in Venezuela. And let there be no mistake, the actions that took place on the 3rd day of this year were an act of war. It was regime change, it was dozens of aircraft bombing, and that American blood and treasure has already been expended. The real question going forward is how much. The president did not come to the American people to make his case about why the operations in Venezuela, which were conducted really magnificently, and I commend the U.S. military and armed forces for that. But he didn't come to the American people, nor did he go to Congress to seek authorization for the military force. And he should have. Regardless of the president's actions, I believe the decisions to take this country into war demand transparency and the consent of the American people. Through the voices of the elected representatives of the American people, the people that are standing before you today. I served in Iraq. My twin brother was wounded in Iraq. We know firsthand that wars are easy to start and extraordinarily hard to finish. Like Bush, Donald Trump lied to the American people. Trump said this was about drugs, but obviously we know this is about oil. And apparently the cost of protection is around 30 to 50 million barrels of oil because the regime still remains in place. He said he'd be the president of peace, and now he's dropping bombs all over the place in Venezuela and many other places. He said he wasn't pursuing regime change, but he got rid of Maduro, and now apparently Marco Rubio is running Venezuela, which, based on the hearing the briefing we just received, sounds pretty darn questionable. Lies like these get us into wars like Iraq and put our soldiers at risk. Once lives are put in harm's way, there's no simple exit and no easy way of undoing the consequences. Of the 7 wounded, at least one may have permanent injuries, and he'll have to live that. He and his family will have to live that for the rest of their lives. The American people don't want war in Venezuela, and these wars started because people like Donald Trump and his cabinet lied to us. We need to avoid Iraq 2.0. Believe your eyes and not the lies. And with that, I have the distinct privilege of introducing Representative Goodlander.
I want to thank Congressman Moulton and Congressman Ryan for bringing us together. These are some of my favorite people in Congress, and I feel at home with this group because I think 3 things really bring us here today. First and foremost, we had the honor of seeing firsthand in uniform how extraordinary our United States military is and how precious our service members are. There is no greater love than a love that leads a person to put their life on the line for their country. And that's what our service members do every single day. Their trust is a precious resource, and the costs of war are costs that we should be talking about all day, every day, because they are the costs in lives and the costs in taxpayer dollars at a moment when people across our country, across my home state, are having to make some of the most painful choices that you could ever imagine a person making, because we are in the midst of a full-blown cost crisis. Having to choose between healthcare and housing, having to choose between gas and groceries. These are painful choices that no American should have to make. At the end of the day, we all took an oath to this Constitution, and I carry it with me everywhere I go because it's very useful on this job, in ways big and small. We will honor our oath by being relentless in pursuing answers to basic questions. Questions like, what comes next in Venezuela? How much is this going to cost in lives and in dollars? And we will be relentless in upholding our oath to this great Constitution, because this is a fragile experiment that we're undertaking. And there's nothing that tests this experiment more than a government that is not honest with its people and a government that is not smart about its resources. So I'm grateful to be with this group, and I turn it now over to my colleague from the great state of California, Congressman Tran.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thank Rep. Moulton and Ryan for convening this. Good afternoon. I'm Representative Derek Tran. I am an Army veteran, proudly serving the people of California's 45th District. I enlisted in the Army Reserve when I was 18 years old because I believed that it was my duty to give back to the country that gave me and my family everything. In 2003, when I was a senior in college, just months away from graduation, I was activated for Operation Noble Eagle and Enduring Freedom. I answered the call to action without hesitation. It was a great honor to don the uniform in defense of the country that I love so much. But it was a huge risk for me, for my brothers and sisters in uniform, and for our families. As veterans, we know firsthand the gravity of taking military action, sending Americans, men and women, into harm's way, require unimpeachable judgment and a steadfast commitment to the rule of law. By ignoring the Constitution and failing to inform Congress about the military actions in Venezuela, President Trump ignored that sacred duty to our troops. And what was this all for? Oil? American lives for oil. We've seen this before. Thousands of American soldiers were killed. Thousands more had their lives indelibly scarred, and trillions in taxpayer dollars was wasted when the U.S. invaded Iraq in 2003. Over 20 years later, we stand on the brink of yet another costly forever war that threatens the lives of our heroes in uniform. The American people deserves better than this. Families are looking to their leaders for relief with skyrocketing costs, and instead the president is draining their hard-earned tax dollars on a senseless war. I love this country, and I will always fight to defend it. We need to hold this administration accountable for its flagrant disregard for our Constitution, our service members, and the needs of the American people needs to be first and foremost. Enough is enough. The last thing our country needs is another forever war. Thank you. I'd like to turn it over to Rep. Cisneros.
Thank you all for being here today. I am Congressman Gil Cisneros from California, a Navy veteran, member of the House Armed Services Committee, as well as a former Undersecretary of Defense in the Department of Defense. I stand here today with my colleagues today to condemn the Trump administration's reckless and unconstitutional military action in Venezuela. The Constitution's clear. Only Congress, not the President, has the power to authorize war or military action. This pursuit of military intervention and regime change without any concrete plan or any way to how to address the instability it's now created within Venezuela is ludicrous. I know because I served in our military, I worked at the Pentagon. This is not how America prioritizes its national security. Our service members are not pawns to be used by the president. Trump can get the media so that Trump can get the media off his back. We all know what this military action was about. It's about oil, and it always has been. Hell, even Trump gave up his, he talked to the heads of oil companies before he even talked to members of Congress. If it was, if it was, he would not have if this was about drugs like he said at the beginning, he would not have ever pardoned a convicted drug trafficker while capturing another. The American people deserve transparency, and Trump can boast this is more, he can boast that he's more transparent than any administration in history, but that's a flat out lie. Trump, Hegseth, and Rubio are hiding from accountability, and they need to publicly justify what the justification was for their actions. I am deeply disturbed by the president, his actions that he is taking, this unilaterally making these highly contentious actions in another country, and I stand firmly against sending America into another endless war over oil. We cannot allow the Trump administration to unconstitutionally and recklessly keep playing with our national security. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague and friend, Representative Jimmy Panetta.
Thank you, Gil. Thank you, Representative Moulton, and thank you to my fellow veteran colleagues here. Jimmy Panetta, 19th Congressional District, Afghanistan war veteran. What we've seen with this intervention is that it brought great uncertainty, instability, and insecurity, all because Congress doesn't have enough tenacity to stand up to this president. As much as all of us up here appreciate the swift, amazing, and super job done by our special forces and intelligence community to remove a despot on January 3rd, we are gravely concerned about the uncertainty that lies ahead in the day after. This Vice President Rodriguez, we don't know what she's about. We don't know who supports her internally or externally. We don't know when she's going to have elections. We don't know if there was a deal for oil. In regards to oil, we don't know who's going to spend hundreds of billions of dollars to extract and revive that industry. We don't know whether or not the oil market, which is already filled with reserves, is going to accept more oil. We don't know how much this operation is going to cost. This uncertainty leads to great instability, not just in Venezuela, but in the region and with the United States of America. It brings insecurity. This president is all about spheres of influence. But what we've seen when we leave it up to China and Russia to have their own sphere, they dominate it. And that's when they threaten the United States of America. This is not about spheres of influence. We need to make it as a Congress about a sphere of governance. We, as a United States Congress, need to step up to our constitutional authorities. We need to ensure that this president abides by the Constitution. But this is what happens when you come to Congress, when you lie to Congress, and when you go around Congress. That's why Congress needs to show tenacity, a tenacity that it hasn't shown in the 119th, now more than ever. Not just to prevent these types of wars, but to make sure that we live up to our constitutional duties. It's my honor to represent a good friend of mine, fellow veteran, Jason Crow.
Thank you, Jimmy, and thank you to my fellow veterans. It's always an honor to stand with them in defense of our Constitution and our nation. I must say, as a 3-time combat veteran, I get pretty damn hot when a 5-time draft dodger bangs the war drums and talks about how easy it is to send boots on the ground in a foreign country. It's a pattern of abusing our military, disrespecting our military that continues to this day. You know, I learned years ago that when elites bang the war drums and talk tough in Washington, D.C., they're not talking about them or their kids going to do the thing. They're talking about kids like me, working class folks from around this country where I grew up that have to pick up a gun, jump into a helicopter or a tank and a ship and go do the hard work. And that's why I bristle when elites once more in this town are so cavalier about the use of American lives and the use American military power. Let's also be clear that our job as members of Congress is not to be cheerleaders. You've seen all sorts of our Republican colleagues talking about how amazing this operation was. I agree with them. There's no doubt that we have the ability to go almost anywhere in the world at the time and place of our choosing and kill or capture our adversaries or our enemies. That is true. But that's not our job as members of Congress. Our job is to make sure that's being done the right way and for the right reasons, and we're being stewards of the taxpayer dollar. Here are some things we know to be true. There's a lot we don't know, but here are some things we do know to be true. This is not about drugs, and this will not stop the scourge of fentanyl and meth that is killing our children and devastating our communities, because none of those drugs actually come from Venezuela. The drugs that are actually killing our kids are coming from other places. Here's another thing we know to be true. This is not about democracy and freedom for the people of Venezuela, because you've just heard over and over again that the Maduro regime remains intact. In fact, it's more oppressive sitting here today than it ever has been. What this is Donald Trump acting like an organized crime boss and using our military to shake down foreign leaders. Not only is that wrong and illegal, but it's going to undermine the safety and security of the American people. Because a smaller, weaker America with fewer friends means we have to go it alone. And when we go it alone, Americans have to suffer the consequences. That's what this is about. That's what we will continue to fight back against. That is what our duty and our oath compel. Thank you.
All right, well, I want to thank my amazing colleagues. It makes me so proud to stand up here with all of you fellow veterans. You heard powerful words backed by deep credibility from the members of Congress standing with me. But fundamentally, you heard from Americans who are willing to do our jobs here in Congress, just as we did our jobs serving the country in the armed services. We'd now be happy to take your questions. And because we are a military group, I will not hesitate to designate folks to answer them. I'm not going to answer all the questions myself, but if anyone would like to jump in, just speak up.
Did you, in the briefing, did you receive any indication that your justifications of law enforcement or national interest could be laying a predicate for actions in other countries like Cuba or Colombia?
Jim, you want to take this?
Look, obviously, we're not going into much about the briefing, and I don't think we should, based on the fact on the TS nature of that briefing. However, what we've seen from this administration is obviously statements that have made clear their intentions as to what they want to do when it comes to, as I said, this sphere of influence, this Don Roe doctrine that he so likes to brag about, basically letting others know that they will do whatever they want when it comes to intervention. And what's unfortunate, and what we have to stand up to, is that they're going to make up whatever they want when it comes to the legalities of these types of actions. I mean, this is the incoherence of this type of policy when they said the drug boats were about narco-terrorism, yet then they do regime change, and it's for law enforcement purposes. Like I said, this inconsistency leads to this instability, and unfortunately, that's why we have so much uncertainty at this point.
I'll just add that at some point you question the value of these briefings, because they've obviously been lying to us about this operation, so I don't know why we would believe they would tell us the truth about Greenland or anywhere else. Next question. Yes.
Thank you. A number of you have mentioned how you have to stand up to the Trump administration to have more tenacity or to have a spine, I think someone said as well. Could you realistically talk about what does that look like? And then have you spoken to any of your friends across the aisle to see if there's Republican support for standing up?
Who would like to take that?
You want to talk about the resolution and your resolution as part of that?
Sure. Why don't you speak to it, Pat?
Well, so I think there are multiple pieces to both formally and informally, what we're able to do, and would welcome colleagues to join. One is we have already introduced a series of war powers resolutions, including one that tragically failed by one vote before the end of the year. And there are plans to introduce, including the one that Seth is leading, continuing legislation to make clear we will not fund another forever war in the United States of America on our watch, and particularly introducing the idea, I think, to Seth's credit, of funding and our precious treasure of this nation, hopefully will bring some more courage from our Republican colleagues. And I do want to say, like, Congress needs to step up, but I want to be very clear and explicit about that. Congressional Democrats have stepped up multiple times. Knowing that this was coming, or fearing anyway, we introduced multiple war powers resolutions to constrain exactly this scenario. And we will continue to do that now that we've seen the actions that they've taken. We just need, a few Republicans actually did vote in favor of at least one of those before the end of the year. And my hope is that now that we've seen the dishonesty and the lies, that we'll see more of them.
The bill that Congressman Ryan is talking about is very simple. It just says taxpayer dollars will not go to ground operations in Venezuela. We should have that vote. That's our responsibility in Congress, to have that vote. And I can tell you that I have heard directly from Republicans that they would be, quote, raising hell if Joe Biden were doing this. Next. Sir.
About the taxpayer dollars, are you planning on offering that as an amendment to a defense appropriations bill this month, or what's the mechanism?
I mean, we're going to try to offer it however we can to get a vote on it.
Okay.
Next.
What about hearings? Is there any prospect of any hearings?
Well, we're certainly going to push for hearings, but, you know, the question will be, will they tell us the truth? Other questions?
You as well as some of your colleagues have mentioned inaccuracies, lack of information, et cetera. What's the balance from y'all's standpoint, especially on the Armed Forces Committee, between maintaining security for this type of operation and maintaining Congress actually being informed to be involved in these sorts of decisions?
Jason or Eugene, do you want to speak?
I have so many things to
Yeah,
say.
John, thanks for the question. There's no balance that needs to be struck with that, right? You don't have to choose between operational security and oversight, because we actually have classified hearings, closed hearings. I'm a member of the Armed Services Committee and the Intelligence Committee, like Ms. Houlahan is as well. We do plenty of closed hearings that are protected. And we all know, by the way, I mean, we served in uniform, we know how to protect that information. We never divulge sources and methods. We never divulge anything that would put our service members at risk, that would be antithetical to who we are as individuals and our oath. But we will push for oversight, right? We have 4 primary mechanisms of power right now, right? One is oversight, and we'll do public oversight to bring to light the abuses, the egregiousness, the lawlessness of this administration, and how their actions aren't making housing cheaper, aren't making groceries cheaper, aren't fixing the healthcare crisis that tens of millions of Americans are facing right now. In fact, it's doing the opposite of what Donald Trump campaigned on when he was elected, and that was to end endless wars and to restrain American adventurism. Number 2, the war powers. We're going to force them to vote on this stuff. If they're going to turn their back on their oath and their responsibility, then we're going to force them to vote on it. Third is appropriations. We'll use every mechanism we can as the power of the purse to restrain irresponsible funding, the billions of dollars that are being spent and wasted on things that don't make Americans' lives better. And then the fourth is we're just going to beat them at the ballot box and replace them with people who give a damn about their oath and the American people.
Thanks. Next question.
Absolutely, and I think these are legitimate questions to ask, especially with the dynamic of quote-unquote President Rodriguez, with her being Maduro's number 2, with her right out of the chute saying Maduro is still president. with her right now cracking down on protesters and dissidents and cracking down on cellular coverage there in Venezuela. And as you heard, and I believe, it's more repressive now than it was under Maduro based on her desire to gain control. So you bet we have serious questions about her. And no, I do not know, and nor do I think that we can trust her, considering that she is a leftist, considering that she is someone who basically is going to fill those shoes of Maduro apparently quite well. Obviously, we want to make sure that either Machado or I think it's Gonzalez, the winner, the outright winner of the election in 2024, are ready and willing to come back and be a part of these elections. We need a timeline from this administration that claims it's going to run Venezuela. Then give us a timeline as to when they're going to start implementing democracy and democratic values, and that starts with elections.
No, go ahead. And I'll just add before Pat speaks, we can't speak about classified answers from a classified briefing, but we can tell you what they didn't say. And this question was asked because Maduro is an illegitimate leader because someone else won the election, Gonzalez. So the question was simply asked, when will the opposition be restored to power? And Rubio refused to answer that question.
And just to zoom us out and to this sign, for those of us that have been through this and seen this movie before, people on the stage and people in this room and people across this country, we had almost these exact same conversations in Iraq and to a certain degree Afghanistan as well, where over and over hopes were placed on some foreign leader who the day before most Americans frankly didn't even know their name. And we were promised that democracy would reign and just a little bit more of your hard-earned tax dollars, a little bit more of our precious young men and women sent just one more year. It's the same thing. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And that is important for the American people to understand, to not, of course the details matter. The fact that Delcy is in the indictment herself, and she's the one chosen in the package of people indicted by this country, and she's now supposedly legitimate, that matters. But also, we've learned this history. Let's not repeat this history again.
Next question. Okay, I just want to give an opportunity to Eugene, Ted, Chrissy, or anything else you'd like to add? Jason, sure, yeah.
As some of my colleagues have alluded to, the lies of this administration continue unabated. And we've been told that the United States is in total control of Venezuela, which is total bullshit, right? We don't have control over this regime, A. B, we shouldn't have control over a foreign country and a regime, right? Because that's, again, not what the American people want. They are done with endless nation-building quagmires, right? The appetite in America for that is zero. We've had enough. This insanity has to end, and we are going to push hard to end it.
Thank you all very much. All right, thanks, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Take 2 minutes.